Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love, starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey everyone, this is Andrew Zink, the host of the Ghost of Tsushima Yotei Gamecast. I want to welcome you to the show and let you know that you can reach out to us via email or find us on Blue Sky. All of the links are in the show notes. You can join the Robots Radio Discord to chat with us directly, and you can listen to this podcast on any podcasting platform that you listen to. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Greetings and welcome back, fellow villagers, to episode 8 of the Ghost of Tsushima Yotei Gamecast. I am your host, Andrew Zink. I'm super excited to do this episode 8, Act 2, Main Story, Part 2. We just completed our episode on Part 1, and I'm really excited to get into the second part of Act 2 on the main story. This will cover all the 3 Yarikawa quests, so let's get into it. So the first quest is called The Walls of Yarikawa. So all 3 of the quests that you get for Yarikawa take place in the Yarikawa Prefecture. So you start the Walls of Yarikawa by meeting Yuna at the ruins of Old Yarikawa. So when you go to Old Yarikawa, you kind of see that there's like old, burnt out and abandoned houses, and it looks very decrepit and just not cared for, not a super fun place to be. So as a quick reminder for everyone, you're meeting Yuna at Old Yarikawa for these quests because Yuna and her brother Taka are from Yarikawa originally. And what you're trying to do here is raise the people of Yarikawa into an army to eventually help you and Lord Shimura free Castle Shimura. So Jin's hope is that Yuna and Taka can help mobilize people there. So you start with Yuna and Taka in this quest at the Walls of Yarikawa. And so Jin asks why there are people outside the walls. So at this point, you're not in Yarikawa, you're on the outskirts of it at Old Yarikawa, and you can kind of just see that there's people outside the walls. So Taka says that the Mongols have Yarikawa surrounded, so nobody can get in. So anybody who's been traveling to Yarikawa, they're kind of stuck outside, and that's the people that they're seeing out there. So Jin then says that recruiting Lord Shimura's old rivals was never going to be easy, but now the people of Yarikawa need allies too. So Jin and Yuna kind of realize that this kind of opens an opportunity for them, because if they can help the people of Yarikawa drive off the Mongols, then they might help them retake Castle Shimura. So yeah, I mean, we've covered this in the previous episodes, but it's established in this game lore that 20 years ago, Lord Shimura put down what was called the Yarikawa Rebellion, and most of the people in Yarikawa despise the Shimura clan. So there's some bad blood here, and that's why Yuna's presence is very important for Jin. So Jin then says that he would need their word before fighting for them. Fighting to help them lift the siege that the Mongols are operating, and that there's no way into the city right now anyway. So Yuna then says that there's a hidden entrance into Yarikawa, but then Taka chimes in and says it was from when we were kids, and we don't know if it's going to be there. So Taka's super skeptical about reaching this hidden entrance, and Yuna says that she has a spot to scout out the Mongol camp to see if there's a way around. So I always think that's a good place to start, right? Like, just check it out, see what your options are. So at this point, you all get on horseback and you start riding to get closer to Yarikawa. So as you're on your way there, I really liked this. There was kind of a start of a sibling dynamic between Taka and Yuna. That's been there a little bit, but it was much more prevalent because now they're going back to where they both grew up. So Taka says that it's weird being back after so many years, and everywhere he looks brings memories. And so he's kind of saying this sort of fondly. That's the impression you're getting. And then Yuna says back to that, well, then try not to look so hard. So you're kind of getting an early impression that they each have different feelings about being back in the Yarikawa area. So Jin then asks if they were there during the rebellion, and Yuna says that they had left years earlier when they were kids. And then Jin asks if their parents moved them, and Yuna says something like that. So kind of strange. Again, this is very much how this game has gone, where it's like, when you're doing a series of quests or in the early part of a quest, like, you're getting a little bits and pieces of characterization, and you can kind of pick up on when someone is, unsure about something, or you're not quite getting the full story, but you kind of always do eventually. But I like how they do that in this game. So, yeah, then you come upon a Mongol horse patrol headed for Yarikawa, and then you hide and let them pass. It was a fairly big patrol. I think there were like 7 to 9 soldiers part of it, and you have Taka with you, and so it just seems like that's the most prudent move that time. It's not super hard to do. Like, you kind of just hold up on the road and they just ride in front of you from a different direction, and that's pretty much it. So eventually you come upon the ruins of old Yarikawa, and Taka says that he doesn't want to see this. And then Yuna says, well, we've seen worse. And then Taka says that this was their home, and sooner or later, everyone has to return home to confront their past. So this is just another line of dialogue in the game where it just feels strangely ominous. And you don't really know exactly what that means for Yuna and Taka right now, but and is this somehow foreshadowing for Jin too, the concept of confronting your past? Yeah, we just don't really know where that's going to go yet, but it was interesting just to hear that be said. So then you arrive at the overlook of the Yarikawa siege. And this is the first look you're getting at the Mongol siege camp, at the city/town of Yarikawa, and just how it looks under siege. So I have to say, just again right away, I thought this was super cool. You're seeing a bunch of Mongol war tents set up. Yarikawa has walls, but they're not huge. They're not stone or anything. They're wooden walls, and they're kind of large stone pegs, or almost just like trees that have been skinned and the branches taken off, just like put into the ground, basically. So they're sturdy walls, but they're not impenetrable or anything like that. So eventually, as you are at the overlook, a cutscene starts. And so Yuna says that Yarikawa stands no chance. And she says, our home surrounded by the enemy. And so then Jin asks where that hidden entrance is that she mentioned. So Yuna points out this river near the town walls and says that if Jin can get them there, that she can do the rest. So Taka kind of freaks out, and he very reasonably actually says, like, there's no way we're going to sneak past this whole army. So Jin then steps in that moment, and he says that he stakes his life on Taka's metalwork, and he's asking for Taka's trust on this in return. So Taka says okay, and that kind of solves the problem. And yeah, I just want to point out one more thing about the river. This is not a huge river. It does require a bridge to get over it into Yarikawa, so that's definitely beneficial for them. But again, it's not some huge flowing river or anything. I honestly would have called it more like a stream, like a strong flowing stream or something. But just wanted to point that out for the atmosphere. So then after this cutscene ends, you transition into a surveying scene. And so then you look at the walls of Yarikawa, and Jin says that those walls aren't going to keep the Mongols out, and that there's too many Mongols and that the walls just aren't strong enough for that. And Jin says that, Azamo Bay back in Izuhara fell, and that Yarikawa will too. And then Yuna says that Yarikawa will choose death before slavery. So yeah, I actually would agree with that Azamo Bay is kind of a similar comparison to Yarikawa for the most part. So Jin then spots some guards, and once you select on them in the surveying, he suggests, we could take the fight to the Mongols to draw off some of the guards, but Yuna and Taka say that it's too risky. And, I agree with that. It's like, what are you going to do at that point? You don't really have any allies yet. So, yeah, and then at this point, you can do the final surveying, which is looking over at a white tree on kind of like a stony, rocky outcropping, and it's right where the town walls end. Like the town walls come up against this sort of stone cliff. It's like a really big rock sort of outcropping area, and so it looks like it's just like built into the defenses, and you can't really get up the rock or do anything. And so Yuna says that the entrance is right there, and that there's a waterfall that basically goes down that rocky outcropping, and that the entrance is behind the waterfall. So right away I was like, oh, that's so cool, a waterfall entrance. Yeah. And that's just something I love about this game. They just find ways to incorporate just everything that's cool. So I love that. So then the cutscene ends, and Yuna says that all they have to do is get through the siege camp, and it should be easy once they reach the river. I have to say, I totally agree with Taka here. Taka then says, that's our plan. Sneak through the biggest Mongol camp I've ever seen, then use the secret entrance we used as children, and see if it's still there. Yeah, this is just another one of those deliveries in this game where I was just kind of cracking up, and I thought it was really funny. So Yuna, tells Taka to stay close. So then Yuna, again, she kind of is like muttering to herself. She says, can't believe I'm risking my life coming back to this dump. And Jin says that it was her idea, but then she says, well, I have to prove my worth to Shimura to get off the island. So a couple things coming out there, we went over this in the last episode, but that, Yuna's clearly not happy about Shimura kind of like trying to get service out of her, basically, and I kind of agree with that. And she's reaffirming that she wants to leave Tsushima. She doesn't want to be part of this fight. And she's clearly not attached to Yarikawa like Taka is. And that's something we're getting a lot of right now so far, right? It's like, Taka's looking around, he's all reminiscent, he's talking about memories, and, Yuna for now is just like, no, this wasn't great, we've been fine without it, that sort of attitude. So, yeah, then Taka says that he loved it there, and she says that he was too young to know how it really was, to remember it correctly. And so Yuna says that Yarikawa is an ugly place for a girl without a handful of rice to her name. And so Jin then asks if that's why they left, and Taka says no, and that he got them in trouble. And Yuna says that it wasn't his fault. And that's kind of the end of it. So at that point, it kind of stops there, but again, some interesting characterization happening there. Again, it's showing the the difference between just how Taka and Yuna view the situation and what they remember from when they were kids. And that did kind of make me think, I don't know. I wonder, does anyone else out there, you have a sibling or, or a friend, and you just kind of remember something from childhood differently from each other, or you remember very specific things, and yeah, they might be different. So I just love that they incorporated that, and you're starting to get more characterization on their sibling relationship together. And also, I really liked what Yuna said about Yarikawa being an ugly place for a girl without a handful of rice to her name, because again, it's just showing you something about class and privilege, that for her, it felt like there wasn't much opportunity, and it felt like she had to leave. And clearly there's more to the story, but, it's just cool that they're adding in, some of this stuff here when, they don't have to. So, and yeah, you don't know what they mean by, Taka saying he got them in trouble and that Yuna saying it wasn't his fault at this point. So yeah, so at this point you're walking along a path up on the cliff. You were surveying it, and then you're like walking along the cliff. So eventually you have to climb down to the ground level to get to the Mongol camp. So there's like a spot where you can climb some stones down, or you can just kind of like walk around. So now you have to start sneaking through the camp. So you start on the outskirts of the Mongol camp after you get down from the cliff, and there's some big rocks you can kind of hide behind if you take the kind of what I would call the mainstream way, I guess, like some stones down. And so you can't alert the Mongols on this quest, otherwise you fail it. So there's no fighting allowed. You do have to sneak it. Obviously, you can assassinate people as you go, but you just can't get caught. So you come upon some Mongols, and they're cutting down trees on the outskirts of the camp. And so, you can kind of see Spitfires in the camp. They're roasting food, and Mongols are drinking, and they're just sitting around fires and talking. And, there's torches everywhere, the war tents. So again, I love these settings. It really gives you this sense of a real siege camp in a game like this. So you can assassinate the Mongols cutting the trees, or you can just sneak behind them for the most part. When you're on the outskirts sneaking around, you're kind of sticking to the right-hand side of the camp, basically. There's not really any reason to go anywhere else. There is one Mongol scout on horseback. He's not super dangerous. It's like he just kind of slowly walks on horseback back and forth, but it's pretty easy for him to not see you, basically. He doesn't really ever leave the camp, and you can just go around the right-hand side, like away outside the walls, basically. So, yeah, and one thing I just wanted to add, I thought it was really cool that they showed the Mongols cutting trees, because that's what you need to do in a siege. Like you need firewood, and you need wood maybe to construct a battering ram or other siege weapons. And, a lot of sieges took time in this time period, so you have to dig in. You need supplies to do that. So just, it's kind of a small thing, but it does feel realistic. And, yeah, it's just cool to see that. So you can basically sneak around the outside of all the Mongol walls, and you really only have to even assassinate one guy cutting a tree. And other than that, like, you can get to the river fairly easily. So once you get down towards the river, there is one group of Mongols with some horses, and they're kind of downstream from the river. So they can maybe spot you. And honestly, like, you can just throw one wind chime like past them, and then that's it, and you just can like walk by, basically. Or you can just kind of just like sneak quickly, and they might see you, but your detection bar won't go up fast enough for it to, fail the quest. You can just go by. So you kind of turn into the river. And as you do that, Taka panics and basically says, like, we're not going to make it. There's no way I'm doing this. And Yuna tells him to keep going. This was one thing I thought was a little bit dumb. It's like, dude, we're already here, basically. Like, it's more risky to turn around at this point than to just keep going. But, yeah, so, it's showing that Yuna, and we know this already, but it's reinforcing that Yuna is like the courageous person, kind of keeping their duo together and keeping the group moving. So, yeah, eventually you you cross the river, and again, it's a small river. And so then you're kind of walking through the water, and Taka says, we used to catch dragonflies here, didn't we? And then Yuna says, yes, and we would make them fight. I have to say, I do not know how you make dragonflies fight. I've never seen that before, but I know, I guess that's something people did. Maybe I should do a bonus episode on that. So Taka says that one of the dragonflies would be a Yarikawa samurai, and then he kind of stutters, and he hesitates, and he says the other was a And then Yuna finishes the sentence for him, and Yuna says the other was a Shimura samurai. And then Yuna says that the Shimura samurai always lost. So then it's kind of a little bit awkward for a second there. Jin doesn't really say anything. And again, I like this scene because it's just showing that there is a lot of historical bad blood between not Jin's direct family, but obviously, his uncle's family and the people of Yarikawa, and how baked into the culture that is. So it does kind of give you a sense of what you're going to be walking into here. So eventually you arrive at the waterfall. Again, not a super far walk across the river. And you walk up to it and you can squeeze through a crack in the cave behind it. And then, this is so cool. You enter like a secret cave cove, spot. And the cave is full of supplies and weapons. And then Jin says, oh, it makes sense, how the people in Yarikawa have held out so long. And so, you see like barrels and a bunch of storage containers and food and various stuff like that. And then there's also like, a pile of katanas and some weapons around. And so it shows that they've been smuggling, supplies and equipment in and out, which is just interesting and cool to see. So then you can climb up a ladder from this cave into the town of Yarikawa. So as you're doing that, Yuna says to let her do the talking. And that's a good idea. Probably let her do the talking, and see how it goes from there. So you arrive at the top of the ladder and you're in Yarikawa now. And it's kind of like cuts to black and then you're there. And you're stopped by two samurai who are on guard. And, they then ask who you are and how you got in. And Yuna says that she and Taka were born there. And that seems to be enough for them at first. And so they asked if the Mongols saw them. And Yuna says no, and that they're there to help break the siege. So then they ask for the name. So the two samurai, they ask for the name of the dead samurai that Jin stole his armor from. So again, I like this because it's showing that just that bandits are now prevalent. And we've seen this all through Act 1 for the most part, but, that you just can't really trust what you're seeing anymore. And, that's a very realistic thing that they're showing here. So Taka then gets defensive of Jin. He says he isn't a thief, he's the ghost. And so the samurai have heard of the ghost, and they immediately say, oh, okay, we're going to take you to Ujimasa. So that's interesting. Ujimasa seems to be the leader of the Yarikawa settlement here. So they tell Jin to mind his step because everyone there is armed. So, you're getting a sense that people are on edge. Makes sense. It's a siege. People just pop up behind your walls, and, one of them is a samurai. So you want to see what's what. So at this point, you start walking through the city, and it turns into, some real gameplay. And so Jin then says that he remembers that Ujimasa was Lord Yarikawa's youngest son from a long time ago, but that Lord Shimura disbanded their clan when he defeated them. So Yuna then tells Jin that the Yarikawa clan still runs things there unofficially. And she says that Shimura put down the rebellion, but created a whole generation of people who hate Clan Shimura. So kind of confirming what we're gathering already. So then you kind of get into the main city center. And this was super cool. There's houses and people walking around and, blacksmiths and just some of that stuff. So at this point, then there's running to the front gate. There's some samurai who are running to the front gate of Yarikawa. And one of the samurai who spotted you before, he says, like, you three follow me and stay close. And so you then, run up to the front gate. And so then you hear a civilian say that the Mongol leader is out front. So you walk up to the front gate, and then you basically, you get a cutscene and a cinematic that you watch from the top of the gate tower right there. And so the Mongol general introduces himself, and his name is General Temuge. And he's dressed in this very big, thick, luxurious gold armor that a lot of the Mongol leaders have worn so far in this game. So he introduced himself as the leader of the war band, and he says that he learned the Japanese speech to tell Yarikawa to surrender before his camp flies their black flag. And if they do that, he will show them mercy. Refuse, and he says they will know terrible misery. Then he says, choose your future, Yarikawa. So definitely setting the scene here that there is imminent danger. I mean, very imminent danger. This is not a safe place to be. And it looks like Yarikawa is vastly outnumbered. They don't seem like they're super well equipped. So you're definitely feeling that, throughout this quest. And again, I think they just do a great job of building up the atmosphere during some of these quests of what's happening. So then you start walking through the city center towards the back / I guess you could say the central part of Yarikawa, and you're going to meet the steward, Ujimasa. So you're walking to the main keep. So Jin then says on the walk that if the people of Yarikawa surrender, that Lord Shimura won't get the army that they need. And Yuna says that they're too stubborn to surrender. But Taka says that if they don't surrender, this is going to turn into a bloodbath, probably. So Jin then says that Shimura, that they all need Shimura as much as he needs them, because united they can defeat the Mongols. So Jin's really trying to focus on their mutual self-interest here and where they can help each other. But, obviously there's going to be roadblocks to that. And Taka says that people there have bad memories of Lord Shimura. And Jin says that if Yarikawa is going to survive, they have to let go of the past. So, what's interesting about this is, again, like, I do agree with Jin on what he's saying. I do think it shows just a little bit of, I don't know, just being out of touch, maybe, because it's like, yeah, it's easy for you to say, but when we as the player, we don't really know what happened in the rebellion. We just know that it happened. So, for all we know, Lord Shimura did things he wasn't supposed to do, or did things that were objectively bad. And the people of Yarikawa are right to not like them, but we just don't have all that context. So, yeah, and then Yuna says, well, that's easier said than done. So, yeah, I appreciated that. So then, you enter the courtyard of the main keep. You have to go through some, like a wooden gate to get in there, and it's a bigger gate. So then you see Ujimasa, and he's descending these long stone stairs towards you from the main keep into the courtyard, and he's got 2 samurai in tow. So they're very much showing you that he's in charge here,
The McDonald's snack wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch snack wrap. Spicy snack wrap. You broke the internet for a snack. Snack wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
And Taka says at this point, you two go ahead, and that he's going to check out the swordsmith. So that's cool. That checks out. So the cutscene begins with Ujimasa and Jin meeting. So Ujimasa is dressed in a blue kimono, and he's got kind of nice robes on. He definitely is not a soldier. Well, you can tell that right away. He just does not have the attitude of a soldier at all. So then Ujimasa says that he never thought that Lord Shimura's nephew would be responsible for the ghost. And he says that Jin better be careful or Shimura will punish him, Jin, and as he once punished his once great Yarikawa family. So I thought that was really interesting because, and again, I mentioned this in the last episode, but there's a bunch of things that were happening in the story that when I was playing this my first time through, I just didn't think it meant that much. But then after I played the story and I saw it happen later, and as I watched, some of the walkthroughs on some of these quests, I started to notice things like that where it's kind of foreboding for what might happen. So I'm not going to spoil anything now, but just interesting. So Jin then says, well, you incited a rebellion against your Jito, and it starts to get a little heated. And then right then, and I loved this, Yuna literally steps into the frame. Like, she just steps in front of Jin, and like her head like her head and her body like take up half the frame. And she says that was years ago and that they have bigger problems now. So she's trying to step in. So Ujimasa then asks Jin, and I have to say, I thought this was incredible delivery. This was just so well done. He says, "Who's this? Your servant?" And the game devs did an awesome job with the hand gestures from Ujimasa, because he kind of like flicks his hand towards Yuna and he doesn't look at her at all. He just says, "Who's this? Your servant?" Like flicks his hand at her. And it just, it just felt like such a real and realistic human interaction of some sort of out of touch nobility encountering someone who's like, "Oh, who are you? Why do I have to listen to you?" So I just thought it was really well done. And so Yuna then, she says that she was born here, and Ujimasa points out, "Well, you're aiding Clan Shimura." And she says, "No, I'm fighting for Lord Sakai for the ghost." So Yuna's very clearly staking out her position here, and it's helping Jin. I realize in hindsight that, she's differentiating, that she's saying like Jin Sakai is different from Clan Shimura. So, that's an important thing to note. And so Jin then says that they can help break the siege outside their walls, and in return, Lord Shimura is requesting their help, at Castle Shimura. So Ujimasa scoffs right away, and he says that the Mongols want to conquer mainland Japan, and that eventually they'll lose interest in Yarikawa. And he says that Yarikawa will survive like they always do. And as he's saying this, he turns away, and honestly, like, it almost looked and felt to me like he kind of like flicked his robe with some sass as he did that. And then he just starts walking away and just leaves and goes up the stairs. And yeah, definitely very sassy. Ujimasa definitely had some Mean Girls energy right there. Flicking his kimono all around. Yeah, so then you start walking to find Taka from this interaction, and Jin remarks that could have gone better. And Yuna says they should find Taka, and she calls Ujimasa a fool, and she says that he can be convinced. But she says, the whole island is burning and Yarikawa is next. If that doesn't convince him, then nothing will. And she's definitely right about that. And I just have to say, yeah, I thought this guy was an idiot. Like, the moment I heard that, I was like, what, you think the Mongols are just gonna pack up and leave? Like, they've already set up camp. They're already here. They've got a whole army here. They outnumber you. You're gonna get crushed. Like, but sometimes that's just like video game logic of some characters. So then you eventually arrive at a swordsmith, and Taka is talking to a blacksmith. And Yuna says that Taka used to visit the swordsmith every day, and if there was leftover metal, that the blacksmith would let Taka pretend to make swords. So again, I just love this characterization. It's just showing that, Yuna and Taka really know each other. They grew up together, and I like seeing... hearing about those memories. It just makes their relationship feel more endearing to me, and you learn more about both of them. So, yeah, and so then at this point, you ask this, you start talking to Taka, and you ask him if the swordsmith remembered him, and he says Shinsuke passed away, and that Taka was talking to his son. So Shinsuke was clearly the blacksmith that they knew growing up. So Taka then asks how it went with Ujimasa, and Yuna informs him that Ujimasa thinks that they can just outlast the siege. And Taka then informs them that the smith just told him that all the best archers of Yarikawa left the settlement to go fight the Mongols against Ujimasa's orders, and they've been missing for days. And so Jin then says that if they find the archers, it may help them like win support in the town. And obviously that's like a key factor to breaking the siege. You need well-trained soldiers if you're going to win this. So then Yuna basically says, okay, meet me in Old Yarikawa and we'll track them down. That's the end of this quest. So yeah, I mean, that really shows you that Ujimasa is even more dumb than we thought, because all his best soldiers have left and are now missing. And he's just like, oh yeah, we'll outlast him and we'll win. So it's like, all right, dude, let's see how that goes. So yeah, that's the end of this quest, the Walls of Yarikawa. I thought this was a good quest. I liked it. I mean, there wasn't any fighting, really. There wasn't any action. There was a lot of sneaking, but you're getting a lot of characterization, and you get into Yarikawa, you get to see what it looks like and walk around, and it's a cool city. It's similar to some of the other places in this game where it's not like huge, but you can walk around and you can upgrade your bow and armor and various things. And they put a lot of detail into the level design just to show you what Japanese life was like in a place like this. So yeah, that was cool. So the next quest in this storyline is recruiting the archers, and it's called The Coward of Yarikawa. So I have to say, at this point, I actually don't really understand who the Coward of Yarikawa is referring to. I don't know if it's saying like the archers are the Coward of Yarikawa. Maybe it's talking about Taka, because Taka ends up having a role here. I don't know. Maybe we can explore that and come back to it as the quest goes on. So yeah, to start the Coward of Yarikawa, you meet Yuna at the ruins of old Yarikawa to look for the missing archers. So this is a nighttime quest when you get there. So you arrive to Yuna and Taka talking to each other. And Taka says, "Remember the old fisherman with 6 toes?" I thought this was just like a funny story prompt to walk in on. And then he says, "Didn't he live in one of these houses?" And then Yuna says, "Don't change the subject." So then you're wondering what they're talking about. So then you start the quest, you talk to Yuna, and you say to her, "What's Taka doing here?" And Taka chimes in and he says, "I want to help and fight." And he says that he'd be useless standing around in Yarikawa. And Yuna says that she doesn't want him there because useless is better than dead. And so Jin says that they're searching for missing soldiers and that Taka isn't trained for this. But Taka says he can learn and that he won't get in the way. So Jin says he can stay, but tells him to listen to Yuna and be careful. So I thought this was interesting. This shows some real growth, that Taka is going to evolve and join the fight in a hands-on way. Right away, I did not think this was a good idea because I remembered from that quest where you free him in Azamo Bay that he sucked at fighting. Like when you're trying to get out of there, if you get caught by the Mongols at any point, the Mongols just beat him. And he doesn't stand a chance against them. So I did not think this was a good idea. I was with Yuna on this one, but theoretically, I mean, yeah, you need people to fight. So I guess you can't pick your allies in a case like this. So at this point, the quest starts. And so it starts with an investigation. So you see some dead Mongols on the ground where you are in Old Yarikawa, and they have arrow wounds, but there's no arrows in them. So Yuna then says that it's to reuse the arrows, and Jin comments that that's a sign of skilled archers. So then you eventually find tracks, and you start running along a path in a dark storm. So you kind of just follow this path for a while, and you've got some, thunder and some lightning overhead. It's nighttime, very atmospheric, and again, very Act 2. I mean, Act 2 has just been so much different weather-wise than Act 1. It gives you a much different tone to the whole game. So Taka, then they start talking, and Taka says that they used to come here to catch crickets in the direction you're going. And Yuna adds that it was at least once a week, and Taka says that they would weave tiny bamboo cages for them. And then Yuna asks him, kind of pointedly, she says, "Do you remember why we came here to catch crickets?" And again, I feel you kind of feel like you're about to learn something, or she's about to say something important. And then Taka says no. And she says it was to get him away from their mother when she was angry and looking for someone to blame. And Yuna says the crickets always kept him busy. And Taka then has nothing to say. And that's kind of the end of that dialogue. So again, it's very interesting because it's like Taka is really wanting to revel in being home and revel in some of these memories, but Yuna is clearly feeling very differently about it. And I thought this was also interesting, just this mention of their mother being angry, and like it almost implies that Taka is in danger somehow. So that's a fascinating story development there. So eventually, you keep walking along this path and you find more tracks along the way, and they lead up to this house right up ahead. So as you get up to the house, Taka asks if a samurai used to live there. And he says, like, isn't it the samurai who won a match against a traveling sumo wrestler? So then you kind of hear something inside the house. And if you go into the listen mode, basically, listen mode was from The Last of Us. I'm forgetting what the mode is in this game where you listen. I honestly barely barely ever use it. I kind of feel like it's cheating a little bit, but you can see like there's a shape inside this house. So as you start to get closer to the house, you definitely hear something inside of it. And then Yuna tells Taka to be quiet. And Taka's like getting close to the door. And Taka says, oh, I think I hear them. So the quest is to search the house for the archers. So as Taka is approaching the doorway, as you, the player, start to approach the doorway, as you get close enough, a bear will just burst through the door. So Yuna gets terrified for Taka. Taka falls down. Like, he just backpedals and then just falls down and goes, ah! So then basically, you, the player, like, Jin defeats the bear. And Yuna then like yells at Taka and says, Taka, you have to be more careful. And yeah, I mean, she's pretty much right. Like, I don't even know if he has a weapon, and he's the one just like walking up to this door and being like, oh, what's in here? You should probably let Jin do that, dude. So then you go inside the house and you start an investigation, part of the quest. So you find some Goza mats, and you find out that the archers have been sleeping there. You find a bunch of food that was eaten by the bear. So, maybe that's what drew the bear in. And then you find a bunch of equipment, arrowheads, bowstrings, and hide to make adhesive. So Jin's commenting on all this. And you conclude that the archers were for sure there. So at this point, you finish up the investigation, and Yuna will call you outside. And she says, Taka, Jin, come outside. I found something. So when you get out there, Yuna's at a campfire and it's still warm. Jin says they have to be close. The archers have to be close because the fire is warm. So you then start to investigate around the campfire. And you find that you find some stolen some explosive barrels. And you realize that the archers stole those from the Mongols. So you realize they're very resourceful, these archers. And then you find some tracks leading along a path. So then, you get a new quest to follow the tracks. You start doing that and you run for a bit. So then you start to come down a hill, but it then turns into another hill up ahead, and you then see some of the archers running up that hill in front of you. So Jin then says to keep their heads down and not to call out, because it looks like the archers were sneaking. So I just want to point out there was some really cool moonlight and thunder at this moment in the atmosphere. Just so many things they do in this game that really sets the scene to make it cool. So eventually you sneak up to the top of the hill, and the archers are just there, and you just go up and talk to them basically. So the archer you're talking to is named Daikoku. And right away they're like, oh my God, a samurai's alive. You're kind of getting that reaction throughout the game. So, Jin asks them what the situation is, and they say that the Mongols caught the archers raiding a camp for supplies, and that their numbers are thinned because the other archers were captured, and that Daikoku and a couple of the other members of their band tracked them there. So Jin offers to help free them. And at this point, they formally introduce themselves. And when Jin says his name, Daikoku says, Sakai, eh? As long as you're not a Shimura, ... So, I thought that was interesting. So then you begin a surveying part of the quest, and you're surveying the Mongol camp, and it's a prison camp here. And it's a pretty big group. There's a lot of Mongols here. So you see a prison caravan, and they've got a bunch of prisoners on their knees. You're seeing that, like they're right on the open. And so the Mongols are preparing to move out. And Daikoku says that they're leaving for a garrison on the other side of Yarikawa, and that they need to strike now before the Mongols leave. So you spot the archers. They're the prisoners. They do seem to be in good health. You're lucky they're alive. So then the whole group starts talking. And Jin says that it's a bad idea to rush in. And he suggests setting an ambush along the route since they know where they're headed. Yuna says that the terrain isn't good for an ambush, so Taka suggests Old Yarikawa. And Yuna then says, oh, there's rooftops on both sides of the roads, and Jin can use the stolen explosives. Okay, Taka, we see you. You got some strategy game here. All right, let's go. So that's cool. They're making Taka useful, and Taka's contributing something. So then the screen cuts to black. And then when it comes back, you're just already back at Old Yarikawa on top of the roofs, and the ambush is like set. So this ambush is like, you know, as they said, there's houses on both sides of this road. There's a main road that leads into the town. There's really only like one or two roads, but the Mongols are kind of coming along one, and you've got barrels set up there. So yeah, so Yuna tells Taka to get inside, and he says no. And he says that he's staying for the fight. And Yuna then says to Jin, tell him. And Jin says that Taka can decide for himself. And she says that Jin can watch out for him then, if that's what he's going to decide. So Jin, so then like Yuna kind of walks off to get into position. And you're on top of a roof with Taka. And you're ready for the ambush. And Jin asks Taka if he's scared. And Taka says, no, not really. Well, a little. And he says that Yuna is never afraid. And that Jin is probably like that too. And this was a cool moment because then you get a dialogue choice. And, you know, I just thought this was awesome. It's like you're getting a pre-ambush, you know, scene between Taka and Jin. And it feels like a little more intimate than what Taka and Jin have had so far. And I just think that's really cool characterization. So the dialogue choices are, we're all afraid sometimes, and fear can be useful. So I chose We're All Afraid Sometimes, and I liked that one just because I play Paragon in Mass Effect, you know, I play Good Karma in Fallout. Like I'm someone who I always pick like the emotionally soft, the good guy option. So I liked We're All Afraid Sometimes, that it's like, you know, more humanizing and real option. And it makes me feel like, oh, you know, like you're kind of relating to Taka more. And yeah, you know, then with the fear can be useful one, it says fear drives you to be stronger and fight harder. And Jin says that his father taught him that. And Taka says he never knew his father and that he freezes up when he gets scared. And Jin says it's because he doesn't have training, and that Yuna has more practice and he has more practice. So, you know, they are just more prepared. And then they both say that they'd both be dead without Yuna. That's definitely true. So yeah, once this ends, the Mongols start approaching on the road. So yeah, you know, there's like this one central road, and it's kind of like it's led by horses, by Mongols on horseback at this point. So they're walking up, and you can let them get up like pretty far. That's what I did. And then there's a barricade in the road of barrels that you can hit, or you can shoot some explosive barrels before they get there if you want. So, you know, Taka, as they're approaching, Taka says, oh God, I'm not ready. like I don't know how to do this. So Jin then tells Taka to wait, to hold his fire. So yeah, you then start the fight by exploding one of the barrels at the town entrance, or right along the road when they get in. And you can do a lot of damage. It's not like the entire party blows up right away. Like most of them will take half damage. Maybe a couple of them will, you know, die from the fire or something. So at this point, after you explode it, a bunch of the archers attack on the grounds. Like you see some samurai run forward who are part of the archer group. So Yuna is on the ground fighting, and I thought this was cool. She had her bow, but she was on the ground. So you are then kind of on roof support, and you're shooting arrows. I thought this was awesome. I thought this was just super fun to be like an archer build right now, where it's like you're just up there, you're shooting arrows, and you're like watching this whole battle play out below you, and you're just like picking off Mongols as you can. And I just want to caution everyone to watch out for friendly fire on this. It can be really hard to tell who's who, and well, I'm just going to say that I did discover that friendly fire exists in this game, and you can damage your allies if you're not careful. So with that, I'm just going to leave it there. I totally did not friendly fire any of my guys here. So after you clear the first group, the second wave comes from like the left, and it's not really a road. It's more like they come running across a grass field. So then you can actually start taking fire now. Like you can start getting hit with arrows. The the first group you honestly like can just shoot down with impunity, but the second group you can't do that. So eventually it kind of gets smart to actually jump down, and I think a lot of people end up doing that. And one last thing I want to add on this, you can explode hornets nests that are in the area if you just spot them, and I just think the hornets nests are so funny. Then you just got like, it's almost like slapstick, you know, you got these like bees buzzing around and the Mongols like so that's an option. So after you clear this second wave, that finishes the fight, and you've then like freed the prisoners in the prison caravan. So you talk with Daikuku and you tell him to take his men back to the Yarikawa stronghold. And Daikuku says, "I know you're a Sakai, but you didn't mention you're the ghost." And Jin then says, "Well, I'm going to help you break the siege at Yarikawa if Ujimasa accepts the help." And Daikuku says, like, "I'm going to talk to him. Don't worry, I got this." So I was like, all right, cool. Finally, you know, someone who's going to talk to this idiot back there. So Yuna then tells Taka to go because she has to talk to Jin alone. So Taka's super celebratory, and at this point, you know, you're down, like standing at ground level in Yarikawa, and everyone's free, and it's kind of like a good atmosphere. And Taka says, "Okay, I'll see you back at home." And I just want to say, I thought that was interesting wording. The fact that he already calls it home, you know, and Yuna very clearly does not. So Yuna then says to you that Taka could have been killed, and she says that she saw him fall off the roof. I just have to say, I did not see this at all. I did not notice that Taka fell off a roof. But that is that's very Taka to fall off a roof in combat.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Chronic migraine is 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine before they start. It's not for those with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It prevents on average 8 to 9 headache days a month versus 6 to 7 for placebo.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor, visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com, or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
You know, I thought about doing this podcast with a co-host, but I don't even need to. This game makes me laugh on my own. So Yuna then says that, you know, well, Jin says that Yuna's holding him back, and Yuna says that Taka is not a fighter, but you know, Yuna tells Jin that he doesn't know Taka like she does, and she'll decide what's best for him, and that Jin can look after his own family. So it gets a little snappy there, you know, a little sharp between them. And I actually liked this. I thought it was, you know, Yuna wants to be out of there. Yuna's not happy with this whole situation at all, and I think that she knows that Jin is a good person, but I think she's got to have some resentment. Just like there's class differences between them. You know, he's trying to help Lord Shimura. Like there's clearly some differences in where they come from. And so Jin then turns away from her and he says that he will see her back at Yarikawa. So not a very happy ending for the two of them right there. But then the quest ends and that's it for the Coward Yarikawa. So yeah, all in all, hey, I thought that was a cool quest. You know, you do some investigating, surprise bear attack. I don't think I've seen that in a quest yet. And you accomplish something, you know, you go out. I love ambush scenes. I think ambushes in games are just fun and cool to be a part of. And yeah, I mean, Taka is really showing some character growth, which I think is awesome. You know, you get to see him kind of evolve and you just learn more about him along the way. So I like that a lot. So at this point, we're now coming up on the final quest of the Yarikawa storyline, the Ghost of Yarikawa. Oh man. Right away, I was like, oh, I bet this is going to be awesome, isn't it? I can't wait to see what this is. So you get back to Yarikawa after saving the archers, and you start by talking to Taka, and you tell him that Yarikawa has a chance because of their efforts, and Jin says that Taka should be proud, and Taka says that the Mongols are growing restless, and he asked Jin if they'll attack tonight, and Jin says that it's unlikely because Jin thinks that they are gonna like let the defenders of Yarikawa not sleep all night and then attack in the morning when they're tired. So he tells Taka to rest. So, and I thought that was interesting and good advice from Jin. It just shows that he, is very strategic minded and that he can guess what he thinks is going to happen. So then the quest starts. Yeah, you get the Japanese lettering on the screen and the sound effect, and the quest officially starts. So then Taka says, oh, I almost forgot, Yuna is in the steward's keep and she wants to meet with you. So then you start walking up to the main keep that you went to before. So this time you can go all the way up to the keep and check it out. So as you get to the top of the stairs after the courtyard and up at the keep, Ujimasa greets you, and he's there in his very sassy, nice kimono that he has, and he thanks you for saving the archers and like helping to prepare the siege, and he says that it won't change what he thinks of Lord Shimura, and Jin says like, my goal isn't to change what you think of Shimura, but we need your help to beat the Mongols, and Ujimasa says what you need is bodies to throw at the Mongols, and Jin says that Yarikawa is known for courage and skill, and that's what they need. So then Ujimasa says that he'll consider it. So again, they do a good job of just showing that the people of Yarikawa kind of are expecting Jin and Lord Shimura to just use them, which is exactly what Yuna thought, right at the start. And Jin, you could say Jin is clever, but I really think Jin is being, his true self here, where he's saying like, he's saying that he thinks the people of Yarikawa have value. That's really what he's saying. He's saying they're known for their courage and skill, and we want you to be a part of the team. Like, that's really what he's saying there. So I like that a lot, That's more my style than Lord Shimura's. So then you go inside the main keep, and you climb up the ladders to the very top floor. Again, it's similar to any of the nobility buildings you've been inside in this game. It's clean. There's, nice decorations and, just lots of cool stuff around. And so then you find Yuna at the very top floor, and she's looking out from the balcony, like out at the whole city. So then a cutscene starts, and I just have to say, I think this is one of my favorite cutscenes in the whole game, and I mean that even for the cutscenes coming up too, by the way. So the cutscene starts, and it's a windy, stormy, gray sky for this atmosphere, and so Jin walks up to Yuna and comments and says like, "Oh, you're awake too," and she's holding like what looks to be a wood flask, could be made of bamboo or some other type of wood or something. But so she's drinking, and then after Jin says that, there's some silence, and then eventually Yuna says, "They killed all the samurai. What chance do a bunch of farmers have?" And then she sits down with her back against the balcony rail. And again, I just love the delivery here because it felt so human. Like it felt like exactly what I would say or hear someone say. I was just like, oh my God, like this is terrifying. Like even if we got the archers back, like this is the Mongol Empire and we're probably about to all be killed. Like that's just terrifying. So she offers Jin a drink, and she says, "Oh, you probably need this more than I do." And she passes him the wooden flask. So I really like this. So Jin then sits down next to her, and Jin then puts the flask down, and the camera cuts to black, and then like the camera had panned in on the flask on the ground, and so when the camera cuts back from the black, there's now 3 empty flasks on the ground, and Jin and Yuna are each holding their own flask, and you can hear them kind of laughing, and I love this. I just thought this was so awesome. And so Yuna is like drunkenly telling a story, and so she says, and then Kenji spent the rest of his day wearing one sandal, and they both just start cracking up. And I just have to say, I thought this was just like sweet, heartwarming. This is what I wanted. I didn't even know I needed this, and I did. This was just awesome. And then the story ends. Then Jin says, "This drink is terrible." Another funny delivery of a line. And Yuna says that her mother loved it and used to drink it like water. And then she very animatedly, she does an impersonation of her mother, and she says that her mother would get mad when they ran out. And then she does the impersonation. She says, "Where's my tea?" And like, it's kind of funny, but it also takes a serious turn where it's like you're starting to get more insight onto what Taka and Yuna's mother was like, and that clearly she was a heavy drinker, which is very interesting because you've encountered that once or twice in this game so far, like the concept of drunkenness and people being considered a drunk in society, but you haven't really encountered it like this. It has a much more of a darker feel here. So Jin then says, "Oh, well, she sounds demanding." And Yuna says that she broke Taka's arm when he was 6. And Yuna says she took him away after that and ran. And she says they heard that they found their mom a month later face down in the street. And so she's implying, obviously, that their mom was dead and potentially from alcoholism. So I thought that was a really fascinating development on that. So Jin tells her that she was brave to protect him. And sometimes, your only choice is to walk away from everything that you know. And at this point, the camera kind of pans in on Jin a little bit, and it's very foreboding. It's a very foreboding sort of atmosphere. And again, now that I played through the game more and I'm seeing this, I'm like, oh, interesting. Like, they're definitely leading you to something. And they're dropping hints throughout, various quests in the game of, especially in Act 2, of what's to come. So it's very foreboding, and that's kind of the end of the conversation. And I just want to add in, the scene ends with Jin and Taka, or Jin and Yuna, and they're both sitting there, and they look over at each other and kind of lock eyes for a bit. And it's just a very atmospheric scene, and then it cuts to black. But I have to say, like, until I saw this scene, I did not think I wanted this, but I was like, wait a minute. Jin and Taka that's funny. Jin and Taka. I was about to say Jin and Taka would be an awesome couple, which, I mean, I guess they would, but I think Yuna and Jin would be an even better couple. And I didn't even think about it until this scene. But yeah, that was, as I was watching it, I was like, oh, I'd actually really like if that happens. But it doesn't. It just cuts to black. So then the next part of the scene is Jin waking up from a Goza mat inside, and there's horns blowing, and Yuna is like waking him up, and she's saying, "Jin, come to the gates, and the Mongol attack is starting. Get ready, y'all. Everyone, equip your katanas, get your bows ready, y'all. The Mongol attack is coming. Time to man the gates. Let's go." So you get outside of the main keep, and you see Taka outside, and he's right there. And Yuna says, "Whatever happens, we don't retreat." And right away, I was like, "Oh, this is epic." I was like, "This is just gonna be some epic stuff right now." And I was like, "Hell yeah! There is no retreat. This is it." So then, from the main keep, you run to the front gate, and this was such a even just running to the front gate through Yarikawa was sick, because it's nighttime and you see flaming arrows coming over the walls, and you can see this battle starting to break out. And as you run through the town, a bunch of civilians are saying, "There he is, the ghost." So again, just awesome atmosphere. And I was anxious. I was scared. I was like, oh my God, like, we got to save as many people as we can. I want to get to the fight first just to try and help out. So Jin then tells Taka to gather everyone who can't fight and take them to the main keep. And Taka starts to do that. So then you arrive at the main gate, and all the samurai that are present are, at the main gate. Everyone's assembled and waiting. And so Jin tells everyone, he says, "Warriors of Yarikawa, stand your ground. We do not run. Defend your home." Just an epic moment, kind of like Gandalf, in Minas Tirith in Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. And so you hear the Mongols on the other side of the gate, and then you start to hear a battering ram just like crashing against the gate. And after like 2 or 3 knocks, the gate flies open, and then you start to see Mongols coming through. So again, just a sick scene. So then the Daikoku orders the archers to open fire at the gate, and you charge the Mongols. Just an epic scene. I have to say, there weren't like an army of Mongols. It only starts with like 5 or 6, but it was still really cool. And then after you clear them, a second wave comes through, and there's brutes with them. So then you clear them, and, you know, again, lots of ammo around. You can kind of use all your explosives. You can use like pretty much anything you want, and you can re-up on anything. So after you clear the second wave with the brutes, you know, you then tell you say, warriors of Yarikawa hold this position. I just want to say, I did not understand why. I thought it would have been really cool if you could have been up on the gate, like shooting down for some sort of a real siege or something. Obviously, this game isn't Mount and Blade Bannerlord, so it's not really like that. But, you know, I still thought it was cool. And I hope for that. Maybe in Ghost of Yotei we'll get something like that. So, yeah, then Yuna tells you that the Mongols are breaking through the northern gate, and then you have to go. So you tell the remaining samurai hold this position, and you and Yuna set out to go save the northern gate and help it out. So you set out with Yuna, you arrive at the gate courtyard, and the Mongols have already broken through when you get there. And there's this big fight that's broken out. And again, I thought it was really cool. It kind of reminded me of like Assassin's Creed 2 or some of the big Assassin's Creed fights when you have allies and there's like, you know, a bunch of Templars or various people, and you're just like in the midst of the fighting. So, you know, you fight them, and you just... You take out as many Mongols as you can, try and save as many of the Yarikawa warriors as you can throughout the battle. As you get towards the end of the first wave, a second wave of Mongols charges across the bridge to enter through the northern gate. And, you know, these are well-equipped soldiers. There's a lot of shield soldiers here, you know, brutes, like... And of course, you can always just chuck your explosives, and that makes it a lot easier. But so after the second wave comes through, you know, you eventually defeat them. And then a cutscene starts of the Mongols retreating. And it's showing the Mongols like running away across the bridge, the main bridge. And Yuna then says, and it shows Yuna and Jin together. And Yuna says, oh, they're falling back. And Jin says that they barely damaged the Mongols and asks what they're up to. So right then, you see 2 huge trebuchets. And for anyone who doesn't know what a trebuchet is, it's just like a form of a type of catapult, basically. You see 2 huge trebuchets up on the hill behind the camp where you were doing your surveying. And they are now opening fire with these massive flaming boulders. And they're just going to wreck Yarikawa. Like, that's basically what's about to happen here. And so Jin sees that. And he tells Yuna to hold them off for as long as she can, and that he's going to go deal with the siege weapons. So Yuna offers to come, and he says no. And he says Taka needs you. And that's enough for Yuna, obviously. So then there's this, the cutscene ends with this sick scene of Jin jumping over the side of the main bridge down into the river as a boulder, like a fiery boulder, like blows up like right next to him. So I thought that was really cool as he's dropping down. So then you start this quest, and you're down in the river. And at this point, you can sneak through the Mongol camp to get to the siege weapons. You can also fight through if you want. But one thing I thought was crazy is as you're like sneaking through, I was sneaking on the right-hand side. So if you sneak that way, you can see a prisoner start like running back towards Yarikawa. And then she just gets... like it's a civilian, and she just gets gunned down by a flaming arrow like right in front of you. And I just was like, oh my god, that's like just so horrible and sad. And it just like really, they just add things like that in that really put you in the atmosphere of the quest that you're in and this moment. So honestly, you can kind of just like, if you want to, you can just like run through the camp. You can just like skirt around on the right hand side and barely even fight anyone, and you can just pass everyone for the most part if you want to. So then you can grapple up to the top of the cliff, or you can just run around to get up there. Eventually you get up to the top of the cliff, and there is a patrol of 3 Mongols that will like kind of patrol the road that leads up to the siege weapon and like go into the camp, so you got to watch out for them. But eventually you arrive at the siege weapons at the top of the cliff, and you start fighting the Mongols operating the siege weapons. There's like a total of like 6 to 8 Mongols. So it's definitely not a super hard fight, but you do got to be careful. Because there's archers that can hit you with flaming arrows, and the flaming arrows can be annoying because then you start taking extra damage, and it's like hard to see, and all this stuff. So then once you get there, the new quest is to burn the siege weapons. So after you defeat the Mongols, you set both siege weapons on fire, and that's a pretty sick scene. And then a cutscene begins, and it's of Jin looking out to Yarikawa. And as he's looking out, he says, "Oh no, they broke through the gate, and that they're in, and it looks like Yarikawa might not have much longer." So then it shows you a scene of a bunch of Mongols crossing the bridge to enter. And Jin says, "Well, we can still win, and it's time to go." So then you have to go back through the Mongol camp to get back into Yarikawa. So you can sneak through the camp, or you can fight through the camp. You can do this pretty sick grapple down the cliff where it's like you can swing from a grapple spot on the cliff to on top of a tent, and then from there you can do an air assassinate of a couple Mongol soldiers. That was pretty cool. And so as you go through the camp, you can free civilian prisoners that are like on their knees being held captive. The chain assassinate is awesome and very helpful for this. I just wanted to, I was like, okay, now it's war now. Like, this is war. This is not stealth. Like, this whole battle, I was just like, the goal is to defeat as many Mongols as possible. So I just like terrorized through this camp, and I was just trying to kill all the Mongols I could on this. And then enter Yarikawa. I was not trying to like really sneak through. So then eventually you enter Yarikawa through the main gate, and you fight a first group of Mongols, and in the distance you can hear Temuge, and you hear him, and he's like at the keep. So they've like, the Mongols have basically made it almost all the way in. And he's saying that like he's going to capture the keep, and that Yarikawa will burn, and that their blood will soak the island, and that it's too late for them. So, pretty intense friend to have if you're friends with Temuge. I can say that much. So you clear the Mongols in the first stage at the gate. And then you approach the keep, and the keep gate is closed, and you come up behind a group of like 6 or 7 Mongols, and they're like kind of setting fire to the buildings basically. And you can sneak up on them and like take out a couple, and then eventually a fight will break out. And so you have to clear this group of Mongols outside the keep walls. So that's a second group. So after you clear them, you then open the gate to the main keep. And Temuge is standing right there waiting for you. And he's got a dead Yarikawa samurai at his feet. And so this was a pretty cool scene where like there's fighting all over the courtyard. And Temuge greets you as the ghost. And he says that the Khan will reward him for the ghost's head. And so he's, Temuge is standing there in this thick golden armor. He's got his arms crossed. It's like, all right, man. All right. The time is now. So then, you begin a real duel with him. I think all the duels are so cool. There's some really sick music that's playing. And like as the duel's about to start, the camera pans in to show Jin holding the sword up, and you can see the Sakai family emblem on his sword, and then the duel starts. I thought that was awesome. So this duel is like pretty similar to all the other duels, but Temuge can light his sword on fire, and that can definitely get you, like again, anything where you get caught getting lit on fire, it's like you take extra damage, and then your vision is not great for a little bit. So that's a challenge. Temuge is a shield soldier. He's carrying a shield, so you definitely want to shift into the shield stance on this. So I have to say, I actually died a bunch of times on this. I thought he was pretty good. One thing I think I messed up is I did not do the mythic tales before doing this. So there were some moves and such that I didn't have going into this. So I regret not doing that. But, you know, after a bunch of tries, I eventually beat him. And so after you beat him, you then see him, and Temuges kind of starts, he's like stumbling around on his feet. He's not dead yet, but he's dropped his weapon. He's basically done. So he's got his back like turned to you. And then there's 3 Mongols at the main gate, like waiting to see what happens. And so then you can press square to slaughter. And I was like, what is this? So you press square to slaughter, and you basically just like behead Temuge right there in this like super sick scene. And then you unlock ghost mode, which if you press L3, R3, it turns into this super sick mode where everything you do is just like a one-hit kill, and it's got this like super freaky music, and the screen will go red like every time you hit someone. And so as you go into ghost mode, Jin is like screaming at the Mongols that are around there, saying like, look at your fate, you know, if you don't run, this is what will happen to you, what just happened to your leader. So you just start cutting down Mongols in ghost mode, like in real life and like actual gameplay. This is not a cutscene. You can just like run around with impunity and just like one hit kill every Mongol you find. So the Mongols are then terrified and start running. So they start retreating back across the bridge from the keep. And Jin then calls out and he says, people of Yarikawa, spare no Mongols. And then he says, for Yarikawa. And then Ujimasa, all the samurai, Jin, everyone screams, for Yarikawa. And they all charge forward across the keep bridge. And this was so sick. I just have to say, this was just so sick. I can't gush enough about how awesome this game is. And so then you start to push the Mongols all the way out of Yarikawa. You know, you make your way through the middle of the town. You push them through back to the front gate. And then you see like there's a ton of Mongols who are like kind of bottlenecked at the front gate, and they're just like terrified. Like they're like seeing that their leader's dead and they're being charged by like, you know, what's left of this group. But you can kind of feel that in certain video games, or if you like read about battles, like the tide of momentum, and you can feel that turn in this battle right here. So the Mongols, some of them start literally falling down in fear, and you can just like kill them. So that's crazy. So then you push them back to the gate. By this point, you can do the ghost mode again. And then again, you're just cutting down Mongols in ghost mode. And honestly, then you keep pushing back. You chase them back across the bridge outside of Yarikawa. At this point, you're chasing them back to their camp. And I was going crazy on this. I was like, let's go. Like, you'll never reach Yarikawa again. Like, I was literally going after every Mongol that I could find, and I was just gonna clear their whole camp. I was literally just gonna keep doing this until there was no one left to just defend Yarikawa. But they kind of stop you after you cross the bridge and reach the camp, and it's like it becomes a total slaughter of the Mongols here. You then hear a samurai saying like, the ghost, and the final cutscene of this quest begins. Which so not only was this so epic, but then I thought something hilarious happens right here. So the final cutscene starts, and it's Taka, and he's looking for Yuna, and they find each other. And then Jin is standing at the front of the gate, just looking epic as hell. And he says, we saved your town. Now we help Lord Shimura save our island. And honestly, I looked at Jin and I was like, yo, this guy is crazy. Like, this guy has a resolve that I've like never seen before. And then the camera pans to Taka. And this has happened a couple times this game so far, but like Taka is then looking at Jin with his mouth just hanging open. And he's literally just like, this guy is out of his mind. Like, this guy is crazy. I don't know how this is possible. It's just, and they do a great job of just like making some of these scenes funny, like they're serious, but they can also make you laugh. And so then in this cutscene, what's happening is there's like a big group of civilians and soldiers, like everyone who's left alive is like gathered here. You can't see them all until the end. But so then a civilian says, we're not soldiers. And Jin gives this super rousing speech. And he says, well, who defeated these Mongols then? Who broke the siege? Who saved Yarikawa? And then Taka says, we did. And then people start to rally. And then Yuna steps up and she starts like screaming. And she says, you can't just wait here for the Mongols to try again. It's time for us to take the fight to them. And then Jin says that they can win if they all stand together and that it's time to fight. And then, this cutscene ends and the camera pans back with all the samurai and the civilians of Yarikawa. And they're all bowing towards Jin, and it shows you 15 to 20, maybe there's 25 of them or something, and it was just so cool. Just what an epic end to this quest. And then that's the quest end, and that's it right there. So that wraps up the Yarikawa quest. I mean, there's one final cutscene I'm gonna get to in a second, but wow, the Ghost of Yarikawa, sick quest, y'all. If there's anybody who's listening to this and you haven't played this game, just turn this off right now and go play this game, because this is awesome. And I just thought this quest was incredible. And again, honestly, my favorite part of this whole quest and the whole quest line, the whole Yarikawa quest line, was Yuna and Jin drinking together. And it just felt like this moment of camaraderie and real closeness and characterization. And it was so cool that you could get something like that and then also get this totally epic battle. And to get the epic battle, but also get, burning the siege weapons, and there's stealth along the way. It's so cool. You have options for stealth. Then you're, fighting head on. Then you get a major boss duel. You just get everything in this quest. And I just thought, I just can't say enough good things about it. I just loved it to the end. So then, after you finish this quest, you get a cutscene. And the cutscene is of Khotun Khan and Ryuzo, and they're talking at Castle Shimura. And Khotun Khan tells Ryuzo that Jin has killed one of his best generals, and Ryuzo says he's the best swordsman on the island, and that he doesn't know how they can beat him. And so then the Khan says that the samurai's code makes them rigid, which makes them predictable. And he says, but Jin isn't predictable. And he says the ghost is not predictable, and that's why the ghost is dangerous. And so then he basically says to Ryuzo that there's more than one way to eliminate an enemy. And that ends the cutscene. So ominous, we don't know what is coming, but we know that the Khan is going to get up to some shenanigans, and it's probably not going to be good for the Shimura Samurai faction. But so, I mean, all in all, I thought the whole Yarikawa quest line was really cool. You get a bunch of different stuff. You get a lot of characterization on Yuna, Taka. You meet new characters. You discover some new locations. You get some of the coolest battles of the game so far. And I hope you guys enjoyed playing it as much as I did. And hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode and hearing about it. This wraps up this episode, Act 2, main story, Part 2. This is our Part 2 episode, and the next episode will be Part 3 for the Act 2 main story. That will wrap up the Act 2 main story. I'm super excited for that. So hey, I just want to thank you all for listening. And remember, if you are trying to fight off a siege, make sure you take cover from any flaming arrows or any other projectiles that might be coming your way.